Kia ora everyone. It's been, nearly 2.5 years since I first talked to Eddie Rakanui, and I must say, mate, we were talking about your post-concussion, and you're a different man now. How's the last 2.5 years been, bro?
Electric.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, it has been. It's oh man, I feel like, in that 2.5 years, I've lived 2 or 3 lifetimes. It's been full on, man. I have had, jeepers, even in the last 12 months, if I look back in a 12-month period, I've just been able to get my hands into so many different things and live so many different experiences as well. And I think that's just helped. It's just helped me feel like I've lived a more full life, and probably why I feel like I've lived a couple in that space, man, in that period of time.
Brilliant, man. So how much did taking responsibility for your health, your journey, I remember at the time you're talking about all like amitriptyline and nortriptyline, how it was just like treating the symptom and getting you down, and you were on this journey of exploring ketosis to try help boost that brain function and get you out of that post-concussive syndrome. How much did that, like taking things back a step, first principles, what's wrong, what do I do, how do I fix it, how do I move forward, and seeing the benefits of that, how much of that's flowed through into, applying a similar mindset to the rest of your life?
Yeah, well, I think it's pretty much a common characteristic that I've had throughout my life, or a key characteristic, I should say, that I've had throughout my life, where I've never really liked being a passenger.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a terrible spectator. I always want to get on the field. If I have an ailment, like, with the concussion symptoms, I want to know how I can address it, what I can do to get back in charge and to take control again. But it's not just those elements. I think about, meetings at work, or if I walk into a bar, or if I'm having a conversation with a random, it applies to so many facets of my life where I want, and I really seek to have some level of control about me, if not the environment that I'm in as well. So yeah, it's no surprise that I took that route, and, looking back from when I was diving into the world of ketogenic diets and ketosis and the plethora of drugs that were getting thrown at me, it's no surprise that I wanted to take the approach that I did. And that's just, I guess, a reflection of who I am. And I'm glad that I did. And I'm glad that I continue to have that kind of approach to it as well, approach to life, really.
Yeah. Nice, mate. So we originally booked this at 7:15, and we changed it to 8 o'clock because you were meeting a mentor about being a celebrant. I've got a friend that's a celebrant, and a pretty special responsibility, gift to be asked to, combine 2 people in love. Like, how did you get into that role, mate?
Yeah, so I'm very fortunate in that 2 good friends of mine, Ali Kane and Charlotte, are getting married in February 20th of next year. And they asked me if I could be the person who took on that role and responsibility. And oh man, it blew me away. I'm not often lost for words, but I was definitely lost for words at that stage. And it's just such a nice gesture. Is probably not even deep enough a word, but when they asked me, just rocked my world. And it just meant so much to me that they would ask me for that kind of responsibility, that kind of privilege. Mm-hmm. So yeah, the conversation, the meeting that I had earlier today was with a really cool lady, Rachel Dudfield, she's a local in my area as well. And she's an extremely successful wedding celebrant. And so she has very kindly offered to take me under her wing and to, kind of show me the ropes and just, make sure I cover all the bases. And just breaking it down into a process, sometimes there can be a bit of a fear of the unknown. So this is my first wedding as well, the first one I'll be performing. So I just really want to make sure, for no other reason that I obviously want to get it right for them, but I want to make sure that the event is as positively memorable as possible. And when I'm a process person, so if I can map it out in a process and then just work out what each step in that process looks like, then I can take a lot of comfort from knowing, yep, I know this bit's coming up and this is how I'm going to address it. And it's followed by that bit and so on and so forth. So yeah, having this meeting just fits my kind of style, fits my approach. Love the fact that she's also very down to earth as well. So yeah, it's all coming together very nicely.
Cool. So what sort of characteristics do you think they saw in you to ask the question of you?
Probably I would consider myself reasonably authentic. You kind of get what you see. I'm loyal. Kind of patting myself on the back here, aren't I?
Yeah, it's good. Got to do that sometimes.
Yeah, why not? But yeah, I've just got initially through Ali anyway, I've got a pretty deep relationship with him. He's one of my brothers. So it's really cool to be able to share that moment and to play such a pivotal role in that occasion as well. I think getting married is probably one of those kind of milestone life events that we perceive. So, being able to play a significant part of that, I feel like, the pleasure is all mine. So I'm really stoked about it.
No, nice. So you got in contact with me about something new that you're doing, and it's really exciting. But before we dive into that, on the email you sent a link from a podcast that you'd done, and I heard you slip in there that you're president of Toastmasters. How did you start doing that, mate?
Yeah, so I wanted to develop public speaking skills, which is generally what draws people towards Toastmasters. And I'd been in the organization for a couple of years, and as they started to come up, when they started to renew the governance roles, I thought, actually, I feel like I've got quite a bit of value to add here. So I put my hand up, and I was the president of Johari Toastmasters, and I've just wrapped that up. And it was during that time when I was president, it just allowed me to identify areas that I could say, we could do this differently. There's some room for improvement here. And that coupled with, being able to build up my confidence and the tools that I could have when speaking in public, and also mentoring other people, like those tick quite a lot of boxes for me. So, getting involved in Toastmasters, and I'm still a member now, I've just drawn so much out of that, and I love what it is. I love what it stands for, and I love the platform that it allows people to operate in a safe environment where they can learn and develop new skills in front of peers, people who aren't going to judge them, which is quite a different situation if you're trying to learn some of those skills, perhaps in a corporate environment. There is definitely a judgmental aspect that takes place. So I think having that safe space there needs to be more of it.
Nice. So for those that are unaware of Toastmasters, I've had the privilege, I did a Young Leadership Award with Rotary, so I got to go along to a couple of Rotary meetings. One of the directors at the practice I work in is a member of the business network here in Havelock North, so I've been along to a couple of meetings of that, and there's room to do sort of a 50-second spiel each time you're in that meeting, and push that sort of public speaking and confident, shoulders back, point yourself forward and project out there. And there's actually a voice coach and a voice recording and media person at that meeting as well. So you got a little bit of judging going on. And then my grandfather, growing up when he was working in insurance, he was a member of I think they're called the JCs, or I think it was Junior Commerce or something like that, and went on to be part of Probus, which is a elderly person's version, basically meetup. What's Toastmasters about?
Yeah, very similar. So, really it's about giving people the tools they need to be able to speak confidently in public. Now, I think, so that's kind of what the pitch is. What I think it doesn't talk to are some of the benefits that you get from being part of a community. So, I think it's underplayed or underrated how when you find yourself in a situation that you might be uncomfortable in, when you're surrounded by people who are all going through a similar journey, there's a lot to be taken out of that. You can find a lot of comfort in that. And particularly if you're a person that doesn't have a lot of confidence, I would suggest that that can be quite a powerful motivator when you have peers and colleagues or soon enough to become friends that are going through that kind of same journey with you. So they'll understand, some of the fears and anxieties that you might have. And you also get, it's quite a structured environment as well. So rather than perhaps hanging out with a few friends and saying, hey, look, can you just judge me on my public speaking? There's that's got a disciplined approach that gets applied to it. So, if you were to speak in front of the group one night, you would go up and you'd give your speech, and a person would evaluate you. And as part of that evaluation, they may use a method like a CRC method, which is basically commendation, recommendation, followed by commendation. So what you did well, something you could work on, and what you did well to finish off. And that's really important for people, because often we're our own worst critics. And I've fallen into this trap any number of times where all you think about are the bad things. I should have done this. Why did I say that? I wish I hadn't have done that thing. But when you get someone who can provide a more objective opinion, then you can start to make a connection with, okay, maybe what they're seeing has some validity to it, and maybe I'm being a bit too harsh on myself. And when it gets documented, it allows you to kind of reference it as well. So you don't over-internalize things, which is a common challenge for people, particularly on the negative stuff. So I really like that method because, it does allow for some continuous improvement. There is a feedback loop there that provides for that. But it also focuses on things that you've done well, which are often overlooked. In fact, they're almost readily overlooked by people.
Yeah, no, it's been something that's been really valuable of the podcast is going through, listening them back and trying to pick out a couple of real gems to make these posts that I've been doing on my Instagram page, a couple of small snippets throughout. And I guess listening it back, looking for the positive, has meant that I've enjoyed listening back to the conversations a lot. And something I was sort of saying to a guy a few weeks ago, he was about to MC a friend's wedding, and I had the privilege of MCing my older brother's wedding. And I sort of said to him, just remember, nobody knows what you thought you were going to go and say. They just get what you give. So don't worry about all the things that you didn't say. Just enjoy what comes out and what happens. And that's been the same with this podcast, especially now that I've moved away from having notes and referencing and stuff like that, and just starting to enjoy a conversation with somebody. You get to the end and you sometimes go, oh, I wish I'd said about that. But especially when you listen to it back, you go, well, that's a fulfilling, complete conversation anyway, so who cares? Nobody knows that I didn't ask that.
Yeah, not only that, I think it allows the conversation to move a bit more organically as well.
That's right.
So you can go off piece. You can just start talking about whatever springs to mind. You can take an idea and grow it, run with it, and then dump it. Whereas, if it's too structured, if it's overly structured, it just doesn't allow for that.
That's right. Yeah.
So I'm a fan.
Yeah. So with you starting at Toastmasters, what was your catalyst for joining that?
What was it? Oh, look, I'd heard about Toastmasters since I was a kid, I think.
Yeah.
But from what I knew, my perception of it was that it was a New Zealand European or Pākehā thing done by really wealthy people, and that was pretty much an exclusive group. And I wasn't either. But the closer I got to the source, the more I realized actually these are people who are everywhere. These are people who are in the car park of the local supermarket. When you walk down a library, they're literally every facet of society. And so once you start removing some of those misconceptions and then having identified areas that I wanted to grow in as well, it was a reasonably easy step to move into it and say, actually, this is something I want to start doing. And, like I touched on before, it ticks a lot of the boxes for me as well, because I'm not just growing myself. I've got a bit of an obsession with empowering other people as well. And Toastmasters allows for that. It's a platform that I can I can kind of meet that happiness metric, so to speak.
So like the likes of BNI comes from a real networking base, and the 50 seconds is about what's happening in that person's business each week, and then sort of Rotary and Lions tend to come from that business aspect, but is quite directed towards philanthropy. Where does sort of Toastmasters structure a meeting towards? Is it basically about the skills, or is there this sort of wider network community basis to it, and a real community essence to it?
Yeah, I think it's probably in one place and wanting to be more of another. By that I mean it's it's a membership. You pay to play. It's based in communities, and I think it wants to grow that sense of community. And I think one of the many challenges it faces is people's time. You're competing. People have a lot of interest. There's a lot of options available to people now. And, if COVID has demonstrated one thing, is that you don't have to be in a place in order to engage with it or participate in it. And I think Toastmasters are still coming to grips with that new model. That said, there's, for example, our club have piloted using virtual meetings and whatnot, which went really well, actually, quite successful. But there's still that element of wanting to be able to stand in front of people and have conversations and be able to build those skills, which cross over into a lot of other facets as well. So, talk about public speaking, but the thing that I was looking for actually when I started doing it was more in that professional context. So when I think about having conversations with people in an office or even doing a presentation in an office, so there's a lot of traits in there that are quite similar to public speaking, but they may be more targeted. So, if I'm standing in front of a whiteboard and I'm presenting to two people, like in essence, I'm doing some public speaking, sure, but it's got quite a focus on it that allows me to work out, okay, what is it in Toastmasters that I want to develop that is going to grow that particular skill set, so that when I am presenting in front of just two people, I feel confident enough and I've got the tools available to me to do that. Now, some of your audience might think, oh no, that's actually just one and the same, but it's not. And it's not, because sometimes when you're standing in front of a large audience, you might get a general sense of what you're saying through sections of the crowd, and that might help. That kind of feedback loop allows you to iterate as you go, where you can take on board and start to digest, this is how well the speech is going down or whatever. When you've only got two people in a room, you're really looking at one or the other. And if one of them's not giving you any feedback or anything to work off, then your feedback loop narrows considerably. You might tell a joke, for example, and if you've got a large crowd, you might get a sympathy laugh. And let's be honest, like it happens a lot actually, where someone laughs and you think, oh great, I've got something, I can work off that. If you're speaking to two people, there's a totally different kettle of fish. So there's quite a lot of nuances there that get picked up within Toastmasters, and really in any sense, that allow you just to say, okay, there are some differences here, and I need to acknowledge those differences and just build up the skills so that when those situations arrive, I've got all I need to not just survive in that kind of situation, but really thrive.
And I guess both of them, you're trying to captivate the audience, but with that small sort of 2-on-1 thing, you are easily the audience, I guess, is easily able to take you off guard and interrupt and interject, and especially if you're trying to communicate a point, or some business meetings can be quite serious topics and quite uncomfortable topics as it is, and if the person's interjecting, well, then you kind of you're losing your way, you're losing your convincing argument or point.
Yeah, you lose your flow really fast.
Yeah.
And so, we talk about having a train of thought. So when you've got that train of thought, or you've kind of structured your argument or how you're going to present things, and someone pipes up with a question and it has to be answered, that can very easily take you off on a tangent that you didn't want to go, or maybe weren't prepared to go on. You're not likely to get that in a audience unless you get hecklers or whatever, but in an audience that's kind of there for that purpose, to listen to what you're saying. So yeah, those differences are something that I really enjoy exploring and trying to develop those skills as well.
Yeah, and anyone that's sat in a meeting knows that meetings, unless the chairperson is very strict on the agenda, can go all sorts of places.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a real pet hate of mine, in an area that I see so much room for improvement with people. So much so that I created an online course on Udemy, and I launched that about a month ago, and it's targeting meetings and how to do them right, how to do them properly. And that's before, during, and after, because I've lost count of how many times I've sat in a meeting and I've thought, this is a complete waste of my time.
Mm-hmm.
And, it doesn't need to be. It doesn't need to be at all. And so I certainly don't want to inflict that kind of feeling on other people. And, it made me think, well, how can I improve this for myself and others? And, it's once again, it's just about breaking it down into bite-sized chunks and saying, well, this is the thing that you should do, and focus on that.
So what was the platform for that?
Udemy, Udemy.
Yep.
And the course is how to host effective meetings. So how to host effective meetings on Udemy. I structured out a curriculum, and when I pulled that curriculum apart, worked out what are the key things that people should focus on, from understanding what the purpose of your meeting is, right through to getting feedback from participants and closing off a meeting. If you had to close off a meeting on Thursday and you had actions and decisions that came out of it, making sure that you documented those and you sent that out in an email to people that day or the following morning. And each of the lectures, or each of the sections within the course that I created, is just really focusing on, this is the one thing you need to focus on. This is the one thing you need to target at this stage of the meeting. And the reason I started with purpose is you've got to have a purpose in these meetings. That's your North Star. It's the thing where you want to drive everything towards. And when you've got a really clearly defined purpose, you'll find that the likelihood of you achieving that purpose will go up exponentially, because people will know what the goal is. They'll know what the target is that they're all working towards.
Mm-hmm. So what's sort of production like on your course, and what does Udemy look like, really? Like, is it a vast array of different skills, or I've never heard of this place?
Yeah. So neither did I until I was introduced to it about 3, maybe 4 months ago.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's one of, if not the biggest online, what do they call it? Edu-learning, maybe. Anyway, so people who are familiar with the likes of Coursera will be familiar with Udemy as well. And they have a whole raft of topics that you could learn, from self-improvement to, I don't know, fitness, business, you name it. If somebody's got an idea for it, it's probably going to have a course on Udemy. And so, that was where I thought, this is where I can reach the most people with this message. Mm-hmm. So looked at leveraging a lot of the things that I was already doing anyway. So I'll give my website a plug, on biglifemindset.com, I was creating a number of bite-sized video resources for people, because people are busy, right? People have got a lot of things that they've got to do in their day. So what I was doing was targeting this, once again, like a really tightly defined action, a practical everyday action that people can do in a 20-second video, and just saying, do this one thing. Mm-hmm. So you have to focus on. Don't worry about everything else. The rest is just noise. And when you start pulling those all together and you start mapping it out so that it's a logical sequence, then you get to see how I only need to do this one thing here and this one thing here, and so on and so forth. And you'll go from being in situations where you're a bit unsure of what to do, and sometimes that can erode people's confidence, to having a full awareness of what good looks like, and then implementing that at every step. So that's what I did. And I supported it with a whole truckload of resources as well. So people can take it away and they can learn it. They can go through the course in their own time. There's email templates, checklists. I created a conversation prompt, basically a script for people. So if you want somebody to do X, then say this to them. And just breaking it down to absolute bite-sized chunks. So it takes some of the thinking out of it for people. And some of it is just how people react to certain behaviors. In fact, a lot of it is. An example being, if I'm in a meeting and I've got, the purpose of the meeting is behind me, we're really clear about it, and then I've got, say, two people having a conversation at one end of the table, and then two people kind of talking across the table, and they're having a completely independent conversation, then I need to recognize that I'm losing control of that meeting, and that's not in my best interests. So what I like to do is I will strategically place like a whiteboard marker in front of me, or something that I'm going to reach for. And the reason I do that is because I make a really deliberate, slow-paced action towards getting that pen, so that people can see, he's reaching for the whiteboard marker. The penny starts to drop. He's probably going to go to the whiteboard next. So I'm automatically I'm starting to send them signals of what is coming up next. I'm about to take control back of this meeting. When I pick up the pen, if people are still talking, I'll very quickly jump in with, cool, so I'm going to write something on the whiteboard now. And they may continue talking. Some people do. Some people are just completely oblivious. Some people may be so deeply engrossed in their conversation that they didn't hear. I'll make an effort when I get out and I get up from my chair. I might clear my throat. And then when I walk up to the whiteboard, I'll turn around and I'll look that person square in the face. And I'll say, I'm going to start writing on the whiteboard now, so I'm going to need your attention. Now, that's not being arrogant. That's not being overly confident. That's just being assertive enough to say, this is the direction that we're going to take this meeting in from now on. People respect that. What people won't respect is if you flounder and you lose control of the meeting and you end up wasting their time. They may not realize that they're actually contributing to a poorly run meeting. That's fine. But you need to realize what's going on. And it's really easy to take that control back. So a simple thing like putting a pen in front of you can do a world of wonders for you. There's little things like that.
Yeah, you said a word there, assertion and assertive. That's probably a muscle that needs flexed every now and again, or trained probably, needs trained every now and again. And I guess, like you said, you're a very principles person and process driven. So what you just went through there is a way of subtly, one step at a time, demonstrating assertiveness with, and it's, it builds on itself and builds into that. And then you see confidence, I guess that brings us into the main reason of what you're trying to get across now is that self-efficacy, that knowledge to know that, yes, I can get to the goal and I have to go through these things to get to the goal. Like, talk us through that, mate.
Yeah, so self-efficacy, it's a mouthful, but remember it. I would argue it's going to be the most powerful thing your audience will hear today, next week, and quite possibly all of next year. It is the difference between people who we would define as being successful and those that are not. Self-efficacy is where you move your perception of how successful you can be away from other people's projections and move it towards how you perceive your ability to be successful. So it's ground in research. It's pretty nerdy, but it has a solid amount of scientific evidence behind it. So once again, it moves it away. So often we think our ceiling, sorry, just correct that. We think our ceiling is here, you know, and our ceiling is here because our friends tell us, our workmates tell us, our family tells us, social media tells us, the rest of society tells us. This is how successful you can be. Self-efficacy is how you perceive your ability to be successful in any task or situation. So if you were to push all that away and your ceiling was based on how you perceive your ability to be successful, then your ceiling, for want of a better term now, can be up here because it's down to your perception. Now, people might think, oh yeah, that sounds like gobbledygook. That just sounds like nonsense. There are 4 key characteristics of people who have high levels of self-efficacy. There's perseverance, resilience, goal setting, and challenges as opportunities. So when I break those down, not me, the academics have broken this down, I'm just relaying this stuff. If you have a person who perseveres, so a person who will put in the required amount of energy and over a sustained period of time to achieve their goal, and you couple that with resilience, a person who takes on board feedback and uses it as opportunities to grow and improve and may not even take it personally. You add to that goal setting. So people with high levels of self-efficacy set higher goals than people with low levels of self-efficacy. And wrap that up with challenges as opportunities. So a person with a high level of self-efficacy will walk towards challenges rather than seeing them as obstacles to be avoided. When you pull all those together, you have got an extremely powerful combination that I would argue is the absolute recipe for success for people. And so that is why self-efficacy is so powerful and so important.
Mate, when I listened to it and you sent me the email, I was like, shit, this resonates with me. And I think it's from years and years of not just participating in sport, but having that elite sport mindset around things and following that through into university and school and now career. Where for you did that just, land with you and go, heck, I agree with this one?
Yeah, it was a long process, but the realization was condensed into a short amount of time. So I have lived a ridiculous amount of positive life experiences. I've won trips around the world. I've flown planes. I've coordinated $50 million science rounds, contestable rounds for science, run with the bulls. I've hung out with gangsters in Rio. I've done enough. I've backpacked the South Island during COVID. I thought it was confidence. And the reason I thought it was confidence is because that was what everybody was telling me. This is what society says, oh, it's a confident person. Okay. But when I was looking into the research behind confidence, it wasn't clicking in the way that I felt it should. I wasn't seeing in the descriptions of it and how it gets played out a clean enough marriage with my life and how I had been having these experiences. And then, because I'm a nerd, when I looked into the research of this thing called self-efficacy, and I can't actually remember when I stumbled across it. I probably should, but anyway, when I stumbled across it, then I started to look at this concept more and think, oh my gosh, that's it. That's the thing. That is the thing I've been trying to answer. That is the thing I've been trying to define, or help me define a lot of what I've been experiencing throughout my life. Don't get me wrong though. Confidence is very powerful, and the two have significant overlaps. One of the challenges I guess I have with confidence is, even if you look at the definition of it, I think it's defined as, how is it defined? How your faith in how something or someone will perform. I've bastardized that quite a bit, but it's a really flimsy definition. And when I look at it, I thought, how could something that is meant to be so critical to everybody's lives and is just in every facet of success measures that we ever talk about, how could it have such a weak definition? So much so that, I play a little game where I'll ask people, define confidence. If I ask 10 people, I'm probably going to get 8 different answers. I might get a lot of examples, but I won't get a definition of what it is. Whereas self-efficacy is really defined that. It's how you perceive your ability to be successful in a situation or task. That really struck me as being odd, to say the least. That's something that every person has heard about. Everybody's heard this phrase confidence, but so few have heard the phrase self-efficacy. Not sure if you can hear it. That's a dog playing on a squeaky toy.
I'm getting it. It's good. How does esteem fit into this? Because I'd not to blow me, you were patting your back before. I'm gonna pat mine now. I'm gonna say,
do it, man.
I try and display those characteristics. The resilience and especially that going towards challenges thing. I love that. But for a good level of time, especially post university, esteem was very, very low, and Dr. Greg Emerson I've had on here a few times just said, that's the human condition, Ryan. We all actually have low self-esteem. How does esteem and self-efficacy, how do those two fit in? Because I think you can still, and that's what's also great about that self-efficacy is those 4 pillars, that foundation is the thing that continues you on, despite the fact that, and I guess it's resilience as well, despite the fact that you might go, oh man, not today, and I've stuffed this up, where does the esteem factor fit in?
Yeah, so the person you referred to would definitely be better placed than I am to speak about self-esteem. My very limited understanding is it's how you value yourself.
Yeah.
The value that you place on yourself. So, yeah, I wouldn't be able to speak too much about it without thinking I might be making some stuff up. But
yeah, go for it. How does it land to you?
Yeah, so when I think about, what does it mean when I think about self-esteem? Yeah, it certainly fits in that the values that I place on myself. So less to do with my abilities, much more on what I think the weight of my worth is.
And so then I guess self-efficacy is a way to continue on and continue through that and improve the value, I guess, despite the current feeling. And maybe you can take your current state of esteem and use that as a motivator, and then self-efficacy is the tools to move forward.
Yeah, I heard in the recent podcast that I did with a mate, Andrew Duncan, he used a really cool analogy as well, where he described it as being self-efficacy as being like train tracks. And I like that analogy because it's, when you find yourself in a situation where maybe your self-esteem is low or your confidence is low, you could still know that you've got if you've got a high level of self-efficacy, you can say, actually, I've got evidence to support this as well. I've mastered this experience before. I've got the roadmap, and it's a really tight one, and I can keep moving forward, and I'll be able to do this because I know that I can do this. Whereas sometimes, man, I'm sure people have woken up in the mornings and just felt, actually, I don't really feel that confident about things today. And you can just kind of get whipped out from you from, like, you know, have the rug ripped from under you. But self-efficacy actually allows you to look back on, because it's, sorry, and I'll cover another bit really soon, but self-efficacy allows you to have that understanding of your abilities. Yeah, I'm actually capable of being really successful in this, and use that as your guide. The bit that I was going to mention just before too is there are 4 ways, and this is one of the like super cool things about self-efficacy, is that it's not a fixed constant. Now, we're not born with a certain amount of it, and that's all we have for the rest of our lives. Far from it. You can grow it in yourself, and you can grow it in others, and that's, you know, that's where I love doing that thing, is empowering others. And the ways that you can grow it in yourself and others come down to 4 different ways. And they rank in order of most important to least. It is what's known as mastery experiences. Then there's role modeling, and there's verbal persuasion, followed by physiology. So mastery experiences is where you learn how to do this task, or you learn how to manage the situation. And then you become familiar with it, you become more adept at it, and that grows your confidence. You know how to do X. I know how to turn a door handle. Turned a door handle before, keep turning a door handle now. I might see another door handle, looks slightly different, but I've turned a door handle before in this other place. Lo and behold, I can do this one. I'm pretty good at this thing. Role modeling is, and another thing about mastery experiences is, because it's the most powerful one, it's also the one I focus on the most when I'm empowering other people, when I help people build themselves up and get these ridiculous levels of confidence, which I love seeing. It comes down to goal setting. So when you think about a goal, I always say, what does your big goal look like? Okay, now let's break that down into bite-sized chunks, all the way down to where you are right now. And then let's work out how you're going to achieve that very first step. Because once you achieve that first step, when it's this nice, small, tightly defined goal, I should say, you will build up that level of mastery of the experience that allows you to move on to the next one with the confidence that says, actually, I can do this because I've just ticked that first box off. Now, the reason I break it down into a really tightly defined goal is, if you set a goal that's too far in the future, by that I mean, or it requires a level of capability that you're not quite at yet, then it can have the perverse effect of preventing you from putting in the right amount of effort. Sorry, if you fail in achieving that, then going forward, it can prevent you from putting in the right amount of effort that you would need to achieve the next goal that you've set. You get into a bit of a rinse and repeat, where you start putting in less effort because you're not hitting the goals. So you're thinking, why would I bother? I'm not hitting those goals. And then it becomes a bit of a spiral. The way to push all that off the table is to have that tight goal, achieve it. What's the next goal? Achieve it, so on and so forth. And you can very quickly build yourself up from there too. I don't think the line is, your improvement line is like that. I reckon it goes like this. You know, you go from 1 to 8, 15, 65, 2000.
Yeah, you bring that exponential growth up. I'm a keen fan of a guy, Lex Friedman, and he believes that, is it Moore's law? Is that the one that's to do with technology escalating? He believes that it's a whole bunch of S curves that are just jumping up on top of each other. And that's exactly what you're saying there about the bite-sized goals. They're little S curves of like up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down. And the whole thing, and the whole concept of it is moving up this exponential curve.
Right. What was the name of the guy again?
So his name is Lex Friedman. He's been on Joe Rogan a few times. He works in artificial intelligence. He has a podcast now called the Lex Friedman Podcast, which is easy to find. And yeah, he's Russian. He likes jiu-jitsu. He's extremely philosophical, and he works in artificial intelligence. So at MIT he was doing self-driving cars. He's a really fascinating and awesome dude. He's had a number of conversations with Brett Weinstein. And yeah, they just go deep for 3 hours, and you leave that go. My brain hurts, but is so so rejuvenated. Yeah, and that's really cool. One of the ways that he thinks about the growth of society and things like that is this accumulating S curves, which I think speaks to what you were saying about those small bite sizes of your large goal, the small goals. Getting some mastery in small steps that gives you confidence to go to the next one, and you can get into that more. And it sort of brings up another concept I was introduced with my daughter, with Montessori, about that mastery stuff. You see it in kids. You were saying about the door handle, and that's exactly right. Like, they won't stop until they've got that thing. And then they have a sleep, and they get up the next day, and they go bang, and then they're like, right, next thing.
Absolutely. I love seeing that too. So mastery experiences. The next one is role modeling. So role modeling is something that talking about the Toastmasters experience before, that's something that you'll see there. Role modeling is where if you identify with somebody who maybe same age as you, or same background, same physical attributes, whatever it might be, you identify them as being a peer. That's a peer, not an apple. I realize my accent might be a bit rough for some of your listeners, but anyway, if they are successful in a task or a situation, when you see that happening, you're more likely to then think, actually, I can do that because that person can do that. And I'm a lot like that person. That person can do it. I'm pretty sure I'm going to be able to do this thing. So that's why I think one of the reasons why, and I'm not sure whether it's by design or by accident, but one of the reasons I think Toastmasters is where you see that some of this exponential growth in people is because you go there and maybe you're not confident, and then you see another person has all the same characteristics as you, and then when you see them growing and you see how well they're doing, you pick up on it. And man, it's no joke. It's unbelievable the growth that you see in people. I've seen people go in and not be able to string 2 syllables together, let alone a speech. And, now they're just carving it up. They're speaking freely. They're helping evaluate other people. They're helping mentor other people. And it's not something you can't fake it. It's not something you can pretend that you're good at. I guess you could, but for me, when I see the kind of the growth curve that they've gone on, it looks and feels very genuine. I love it. It's really cool.
Yeah, I love that too, mate. Role modeling is fantastic. That's sort of the vehicle that I use this podcast as, and it's so good to be able to have a conversation around that concept. And I've sort of I'm training for an ultra marathon in January, and so through that I've sort of come up every time I do a run, hashtagging it Circle of Savages, a group of friends, a community. To this is my contribution to the community. This is me. We're friends. This is what I'm capable of or achieving. And I'm looking for you to show me what you're doing and keep me going. And they do, and it's great. And role modeling this. You give me great vibes here tonight, Eddie.
all good. And then I get the same from jiu-jitsu. So I still do Brazilian jiu-jitsu. I love it. And one of the things I find when I'm rolling with a person on the mats, sparring with a person on the mats, is if I'm rolling with someone who I feel, once again, is very similar to me, there's no reason, they're doing something, there's no reason I can't do that thing. I might not have even thought of it before though, they did it to me. But as soon as they do it, I'm like, hang on a minute, I should be able to do that. What do I need to do now to be able to do that? And yeah, that's just another application of role modeling in action.
Work it.
What else is there? There's verbal persuasion. So verbal persuasion it's not one I like to delve into too much. Verbal persuasion is where you can congratulate someone on something that they've done. And that's fine. There's a lot of value in it. There's a lot of merit in it. It comes unstuck, and it's less powerful than the other two that I've mentioned, which is probably why I don't focus on it so much. But it comes a lot more unstuck when the platitudes that you've given a person either aren't entirely sincere, or they're misplaced, or they're just inaccurate, or they don't match the perception of the person who's receiving it. So there's a lot that can get kind of caught up in it. If you do it with kids, it can come apart really fast, because we're often told to, and I agree with the principle and the concept, don't get me wrong, but when we're often told to praise kids a lot, and we rightly should, but it's about praising for the right reasons, not this kind of vacuous, I've got nothing else to say, so I'll just praise the kid. Praise the effort, absolutely, always. I love that. But kids pick up on it really fast, and the research is really tight on this as well, that kids will pick up on it, and then it loses its effectiveness quite quickly. And then the perverse effect is that that child can start to lose trust in you, because you start to undermine your integrity when you say one thing that's not actually what's taking place. So yeah, that verbal persuasion, not to knock it, but I don't use it a lot, because the other two are just so powerful. Mastery experiences like that's the big ticket item. And lastly, physiology. So it can come down to just how you're feeling. Sometimes you wake up in the morning and you feel like death. I don't know. You're just not up to speed. You're having an off day, and it happens. It happens all the time to people. But once again, I don't focus a lot on that, simply because the other two are just so powerful in their own right that, if you get mastery experiences under your belt, you're home and hosed. It's just that powerful.
Yeah. So on the physiology, if we go right back to our first conversation, using ketogenic diet as a tool at the time was a way to optimize your physiology when you've got an injured brain. And there's things like blue blockers and sleep trackers, and what time you have your coffee, or whether you're intermittent fast in the morning or night, or you can, there's rabbit holes everywhere. What are sort of some of your tools that you try go through to morning and night get that physiology as good as it can be? You can do everything right and still wake up, or it was too hot last night and you had 2 duvets on the bed. There's all the uncontrollables, but what are the things that you try to control? What controllables do you address?
Yeah, so I need to practice what I preach here, but sleep. You got to sleep. It is the foundation for how the rest of your day is going to play out.
Yeah.
LeBron James has this, and I'll talk to some of the other things that I do as well, but one of the mindfulness tools I use is an app called Calm, CALM. And LeBron James has a little bit of a section on it where he talks about the importance of his sleep. And here is a guy who, like him or loathe him, is at the top of the game. He's in, top 1 or 2% of the players of a very competitive sport. And he prioritizes his sleep and then works backwards everything else from there. So he has to have a certain amount of sleep over the night. He also sleeps during the day, which is what you can do when you're worth gazillions. But prioritizes his sleep at night, and it's always recovery. Like that's the kind of sacrosanct part of his life. Nothing is allowed to affect his sleep. And then the business, the playing, the training, the socializing, the every single other facet will all be revolved around ensuring that he gets that chunk of sleep, because he does that bit right. And that means he can perform in every other facet that I just described. There's so much to learn from that. He's not the first. He certainly won't be the last. Matthew Walker, who's been on Joe Rogan as well, has, talked about the importance of sleep. Like I said, though, I need to practice what I preach. In my defense, and I'm always going to have an excuse. This is me reaching for an excuse right now. I find I love doing all the things that I do. If I could do more, I would. And I live a really active life. I don't say I'm a LeBron James, but I've got 4 kids. Look after my mum. I've got my uncle living with me. Toastmasters, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, my wedding celebrant. Started up a business. I'm about to launch a startup accelerator next year. I've got a full-time job. Invest in properties. I'm deep, but it comes back to having more sleep. If I want to perform in all those other areas, it's got to be the sleep. So yeah, it's a I shouldn't say it's a challenge. It should be a non-negotiable, but that tends to be the first thing that I end up sacrificing is sleep. And then once you get that under your belt, or once I've got that under my belt, what are some of the other things I do? So I went through an exercise where I broke down happiness, and I tried to I defined happiness, and I've gone like this with happiness. Happiness is one of those things I may never fully understand until my last day on earth. But I looked at what are the things that when I do them, I draw happiness out of them. And I use an acronym. It's called Devious Tap. So the D is discomfort. The V is variety. The S is social connection. Sorry, the V is also value as well. I'll talk to that. Variety and value. The S is social connection. The T is a thing called time affluence, which if you haven't heard about yet, you're in for a treat because it's an awesome thing. And then what else is it? The P. So the P is practice. So within practice, these are some things that I practice, and that's like sleep, exercise, intimacy, savoring, and gratitude.
Okay.
Yeah. So each one of those is when I do one of them or I experience one of them, I draw happiness out of it. It makes me happy. I'd like to say 100% of the time, maybe not, but I'll call it early to late 90s, somewhere in there. Yeah. So, I felt like I wanted to know, what does happiness look and feel like for me? Like if I have to explain it to myself, what does it look and feel like? Cool. There's this thing up here. Here's this thing over here that I might be doing on Monday, whatever. If this thing over here does not line up with this definition over here, then I have to ask myself the question, why the hell am I doing it? I have to, because if it's not increasing my happiness, I should get rid of it, or at least ask myself the question, why am I doing this thing? And in the absence of having that definition, I'd probably just go round and round in circles saying, oh, maybe it's for this reason or this reason. But no, if it doesn't match up with that, I can just thanks, but no thanks. I need to get that off my plate.
Yeah. Well, you said trying to define happiness was a wiggly, squiggly line, but going a step back from that, what was the process like trying to define happiness? Were you sitting down journaling? Were you in some sort of workshop somewhere and they brought it up, or what? How did what I've often found it? I was sitting at waiting for a friend at lunch the other day, and there was a lady doing a coaching session with 3 women, and I was sort of eavesdropping. I had nothing else to do. I decided that I wasn't going to be scrolling on my phone. I was going to enjoy the nice sunny day in Hawke's Bay, and I overheard her say sort of to these 3 ladies, I want you to write 10 things. What does when I do these things, I'm happy. And it's funny you brought up happiness.
Oh, nice.
And so she, was mucking around, and then I caught again over to the table, and she directed at one of the women, well, what's one of your things? And she said, I smile. And I was going, wow, like you need this interaction. And so, of course, being a good coach, you followed it up and said, what does that look and feel like you just said before. But for those people that have never given themselves the time to really ask 2 more whys, why do I do the thing? Why am I happy? What did it look like when you were sitting there going on that squiggly adventure of defining happiness?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's the squiggle shape itself. Like, it wasn't a linear journey at all. It's taken a long time to get to this stage. There's times where I doubt it. Don't get me wrong. Times where I simplify it sometimes, and I think as recently as a week or 2 ago, I thought, actually, is love enough for me to have defined happiness? And I thought, I totally subscribed to it. And I said, yeah, actually it is, because it's where I'd started years ago. And like, no, love is all I need. And that's the thing that I would use to define happiness. But it's not enough for me, I think. And the journey that I've been on, I was at a job about 7 years ago. I started about 7 or 8 years ago. And I was there for about 3 years, and I started to get a sense of, I don't feel like this organization recognizes the value that I believe I can bring to this organization. And I started to go through a process of saying, oh, well, then what do I need to do to be able to bring that kind of contribution to the organization that I feel I can, and that needs me to move up the food chain, climb the ladder. So I was starting to have conversations with managers and the like, and saying, okay, well, what do you think I need to do? And there was a tool that I used called the Johari Window, Johari. And what it does is it breaks a square into 4 quadrants. And in it, you basically have what I know about myself, upwards, and what others know about me. And you'll start to see that you'll know things about yourself that other people don't know about you. And there'll be things that other people know about you that you don't actually know about yourself. It's a blind spot to you. And then that was certainly one area where I started to explore and say, well, that's interesting. I've got these blind spots, and now I'm starting to shine a bit of a light on it. And I use that same principle and that same kind of methodology to ask, well, what are the things that I like doing, and what are the things that I don't like doing? What are the things that I'm really good at, and what are the things that I'm average at? And then I started to see things where I was really good at it, but I hated doing it. An example is like typing. Like, I can type fast, but I don't want to sit behind a keyboard all day. I've been told on numerous occasions that I have a very polite phone manner, but I don't want to sit on the phone all day. It's things like that. And when I start to explore those, and I can start to use that as a lens and run that across other facets of my life. Or what's this thing that I'm doing over here that I don't actually like doing at all, but I'm really good at it. Or, I'm really good at this thing, but I'm no good at this thing, but I'm good at, or I'm no good at this thing and I don't even like it, but why am I doing it? Oh, right. It doesn't come back up to that line of sight with how I've defined happiness. I need to get rid of this thing. This thing's no good for me.
Mm. Nice.
So yeah, like I said, it's a very roundabout journey. Still on it, by the way, still very much on it. But I feel like I'm getting, so it's almost like wearing a suit or something, you know. Some parts of it feel really snug, and then some parts I'm like, yeah, I might need to hem that up a wee bit.
Mate, I love your growth mindset on all of this. It's fantastic. So you brought up that you're going to be launching a startup. What would you call it?
So yeah, it's a startup accelerator.
Accelerator.
Accelerator. So if anybody's familiar with Techstars, they'll be familiar with this kind of thing. If you're in the Wellington region, you've probably heard of Creative HQ. So what we do is myself and two other founders, we're going to be launching a company called Zenith early next year. And that is going to take a lot of this talent that is lying dormant in Wellington or has not got opportunities to grow. So we take an early stage startup and we move them to MVP, so the minimum viable product. We'll do it in an 80-day or 3-month window. And what we do is we get them up to speed with the things that they need to get into a market, and we couple that with advisors that are some of the most intelligent people you'll ever meet. We're fortunate enough that we've got a really cool network of people, international advisors, and these are just, some of these people are absolute guns. One guy's got a PhD in some field of maths and artificial intelligence or something.
Wow.
They're frighteningly smart, which is great, because that's exactly what startups need. They need people who are just absolute front-end pioneers, top 1% thinkers, to help them smash through these ceilings that are, being projected around them. So yeah, that's a really exciting opportunity. Ran, Ben Shahar, and Elissa. Gosh, what's just slipped my mind. But anyway, the three of us together, looking forward to this really cool opportunity, because there's just so much that gets lost in the system. I'm based in Wellington, capital city of New Zealand, and if you've only got one or two players in town like a Creative HQ, they've only got the capacity to take so many startups. What happens to the rest of them? What happens to the ones that actually should have been picked up, or they should have had better quality advisors looking at these people? And so that we place an absolute premium on the high caliber of the advisors that we're bringing on board, because that's a fundamental difference that we're going to offer. Obviously I'm selling this because I believe in it so much. And it leverages one of the things that, I've obviously talked about quite a lot, is I love empowering people. And so the ability to empower people who are in a startup environment and help them go from here to wherever up there looks like, man, that's unicorn territory. I love it.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Mate, so I'm going to need you to flick me through a couple of addresses, because these are all such awesome things that will need to be in the show notes.
Sure. Just
reel off again where people find you specifically.
Yep. So head to biglifemindset.com. That's biglifemindset.com. And when you get there, you're going to see a whole bunch of free resources. They're free to you, for you to use, abuse, share, do what you want with them. But yeah, comment on them, leave some feedback, let me know what's working, areas that you want to improve on as well. And very soon I'll start sending up a subscribe link as well, just so people because I'll start putting out this information and just making sure it gets to people in their hands as soon as they can, because I'm an evidence-based person. If I think something is going to improve my life, I'll do it. And if it does, I'm going to share it with you. So as soon as that happens, I'm throwing it on an email and it's coming your way. So yeah, biglifemindset.com. And the startup accelerator is zenithaccelerator.com. So zenithaccelerator.com.
Wicked. Mate, so you've had the last question before. What's the thing that sort of guides you along at the moment, you today? So how you think about it is, it can be a quote, or it can be a a way of life, or just something that shows up when you're in flow, when things are going well? What's vibing for you at the moment?
Yeah, I've got a couple. Two that spring to mind is always moving forward.
Yeah, I like that.
I feel like that's me, always moving forward. And one that I heard at the kids' assembly the other day, which just is a beauty. It's a Dr. Zeus quote. Yeah, why fit in when you were born to stand out?
Oh, I like that. That's good. Yeah.
I love it.
Lovely. Eddie,
Awesome.
thank you so much. As I said, make sure you flick me through all those website links, because they're fantastic. And this has been a bloody awesome pleasure. We shouldn't have waited so long, 2.5 years, gee whiz. But it's been wicked to have you back and having an awesome conversation, bro.
Awesome. Likewise. Thank you very much, man. I appreciate that, Ryan. That was very cool.
Cheers, bro.